It was 5 a.m. I sat in some stranger's loft in New York City, wondering who were these people around me, and why hadn't any of them punched anybody else in the face? No police had arrived. No one was telling me to leave. It was 2003. I had just moved to Brooklyn, and I didn't know when I was supposed to go home. I'm a country boy from birth, raised in Jacksonville, Vermont, population 171 at the time I graduated high school. My graduating class was 11 people, and that's a public school. It serviced all the kids in 3 towns, although a number of them dropped out to begin working before graduation. Jacksonville, Vermont is a 2-hour drive from Boston, so as soon as I got my driver's license, I began to regularly make that trip to attend punk shows. Later, I would move there for college and stay a post-graduation year. In all my years in Boston, including those when I was a young high schooler, not a Friday or Saturday night went by where I didn't see someone get punched in the face. Sometimes it was a group of people punching one person. Sometimes it was a group of people punching a group of people. More often than you would believe, it was one guy who didn't see it coming, just getting clocked in the head. But it always happened, particularly on the weekend, and usually at a party. You have to keep in mind that, coming from my small town, I just assumed this was normal. Everyone in Vermont told me that cities were dangerous, so when some small drama evolved into physical violence, it didn't seem unreasonable. After the fight, the party was usually over. The host would send everyone out into the street and lock the door behind them. But if it was your close friend throwing the party, you might walk around the block a couple of times, waiting to see if they let people back in. Only our friends, the host would whisper, ushering you quickly through the door. But as the party picked back up to full speed, often a second fight would break out. And that's when you knew it was definitely time for bed. I moved to Brooklyn when I was 23, and the thing that stood out to me immediately was the lack of punching. I was reared on stories of New York in the 70s and 80s. Crime and prostitution and violence, they said. But months went by and there was rarely cross words and never a scuffle. Loft parties would go on until well after the sun had risen. No one punched anyone, and you were never asked to leave. This was the first time I realized that Boston, with its historic landmarks and Ivy League school, was actually a particularly violent city. As I mentioned before, by the time I moved to Boston, I already had a crew of friends that I had met through going to punk shows. Many of these people are still my friend to this day. I never became particularly close to the other students attending my college. I bring this up only to mention a phenomena that you might already be aware of. Locals fight more. My Boston crew included punks, mods, skins, hardcore kids, indie kids, and all the gay people we could find. Most of these people weren't brawlers, but there was always someone around that you didn't want to turn your back on. I remember pre-gaming a Saturday night at my friend John's apartment. There was maybe 7 of us there drinking beer and cheap vodka before we went out to a party. I sat on the couch talking to John, who faced me from the living room doorway, his large body leaving no room for someone to get by. When a slim friend tapped John on the shoulder to excuse himself into the room, John turned around and knocked him out with one punch. John, seeing what he had done, fell to his knees and scooped the boy into his arms. John leaned close to the unconscious boy's face, said he was sorry, and began to quietly cry. Me, I stayed on the couch. Glad it happened to somebody else this time. While the actions that set off the violence often seem random, this crew of Boston brawlers did have a strange code of ethics. No man was allowed to hit a woman. If a man did hit a woman, immediate violent repercussions returned to him. Of course, the women fought each other as much as the men, but the most a man could do to involve himself in a woman's fight was get in between the scuffle and willingly accept all punches thrown. One of the stranger moral dilemmas I've witnessed took place at a house party in Allston, the area of Boston that housed most of Boston University. My friend Quinn had done something to thoroughly upset a girl we didn't know. I've never been sure what it was. By the time I was on the scene, the girl was screaming in Quinn's face and batting him about the shoulders. After a minute of this, she grew tired and stormed out of the party. Moments later, though, she was replaced by a scrawny, extremely flamboyant boy who picked up where she left off. The boy shouted a couple of words and then spit in Quinn's face. At this point, I could see the gears turning. Quinn never hesitated to hit someone smaller than himself, and by now, this boy would have usually been toast. But something in the boy's flamboyant demeanor made Quinn question whether he counted as a man or a woman. Quinn stood perfectly still and brooded for a while, giving the boy time to meet back up with the angry girl on the street out front. A few stunned seconds went by before Quinn made his decision. He raced onto the porch, picked up a shopping cart that someone had stolen from a supermarket, and smashed it down on top of the flamboyant boy's scrawny body. Quinn then wandered down the street, muttering to himself, still unsure where this act fit in his unwritten code of ethics. Years later, after the Patriots won the Super Bowl and Boston rioted in the streets, I saw a man in a car hit and murder one of the rioters. Quinn chased that car a quarter mile through Boston's celebratory chaos, pushing people out of the way and keeping a hawk eye on the vehicle even when it almost made it out of sight. Eventually, Quinn ripped that man out of his car, his vehicle still in drive, and held him down as people who didn't understand what was happening tried to get Quinn off of him. "He killed somebody," Quinn kept shouting, using his right arm to hold the man and his left arm to fend off onlookers. Eventually, the police arrived and both men were arrested. Quinn later testified against this man, and the man was convicted. At the trial, though, there was no mention of the fact that moments before he witnessed the crime, Quinn had been on the street, flipping parked cars. I, myself, have never been in a fight. I've never hit anyone, and I've never been hit. Still, through my years in Boston, I learned that a pool ball in a sock being cracked over someone's head makes the exact same sound as two pool balls making contact on a table. I've seen a man hit so hard and unexpectedly from behind that the sentence he was saying slowed down and fizzled out, like a toy being unplugged before he fell to the ground. I've seen celebrities knocked out simply for being recognizable. I've seen a brawl that filled every inch of a 3-story stairwell with people being tossed over the railing. They landed on other people fighting below while pepper spray rained down from the top floor. I've seen a man who served 3 years in prison for involuntary manslaughter talk another man out of fighting and bring that man to tears. Mostly, I've just seen things that I wish never happened. Each fight ended the same way, with people telling stories, just like the stories I'm telling right now. I think that's why they did it. Local guys looking for another story to tell about the town they grew up in. Sometimes, if no one heard about a Wednesday house party, the fight stories from Saturday night had to last all the way until the following weekend. I'd hear them warp and change over time, always making it sound like the people they beat up deserved it more. This song, Love Will Carry Me Home, is about the mixed feelings I have about Boston and the friends I didn't know I could lose. Now I live in Brooklyn. I've been mugged twice, once by a man flashing a gun, and once by 2 men who lifted me off the ground as a third man removed my wallet from my pocket. Even in this second scenario, the men were quite gentle with me. A mellow mugging, I called it. 15 years in Brooklyn, and I've rarely seen a fight. After my time in Boston, I see this as more of a privilege than a right. Maybe I'm just not hanging out with enough locals.
What I kept hearing my friends saying they want trouble, and sure enough, there'd be violence in the future, some blood, then we'd all go home. Hung in Boston with some boys too loud for living. Every weekend, swung some punches, won't be forgiven. Maybe so, guess I'll never know. But love will carry me home. Yes, love will carry me home. Love will carry me home. And I won't be back no more. I grew older and moved away from all that trouble. Sure didn't miss it, didn't realize I could escape it. Sometimes you don't choose your friends. You're young, they're just around you back then. But love will carry me home. Yes, love will carry me home. but love will carry me home. Yes, love will carry me home. Love will carry me home. And I won't be back no more. Yes, love will carry me home. Yes, love will carry me home. Love will carry me home. And I won't be back no more.
You've been listening to episode 4 of Listening to Fletcher C. Johnson. I'm Fletcher C. Johnson. The song you just heard, Love Will Carry Me Home, will be on my upcoming full length titled Are You Feelin' It? That comes out October 14th. Until then, it's only available here on the podcast. Oh, and October 18th, that's a Friday, we'll be playing this song at a record release show at Union Pool in Brooklyn. Speaking of live music, I've had a lot of great offers rolling in for my solo acoustic tour that I'm setting up. I asked for living rooms, and people are delivering.
Yes, you.
Shout out to Ken in Stroudsburg and Pat in Morro Bay.
Yes, you.
Podcast fans who reached out before I even posted about this on social media. I want to play at your house. Shout out to Sarah in Virginia Beach and Jenny in Austin, getting a lot of great offers. Sorry if I haven't responded to your email yet. I will get to you. I made a spreadsheet. There's just a lot of organization that's going into this. I'm putting towns up on the map, putting some pins in there, but there's still some gaps. I'm looking to play in people's houses, preferably their living room.
Live performances.
If you have a living room and you know some folks that would like to see an acoustic Fletcher C. Johnson performance, email me at fletchercjohnsontour@gmail.com. I think it's those small towns in the Midwest that may be the key to getting me around this whole wide country. In next week's episode, I have stories of 4 strange places I've woken up in Portland, Oregon. Not mentioned in the episode is the time I woke up in a cardboard box on the roof of a diner and everything smelled like pancakes. Thanks again to the man behind the magic, James Ellis at Public Announcement, who is actually sitting beside me as I record today's credits. Listening to Fletcher C. Johnson was written by me and produced by myself and James Ellis at the Public Announcement Global Headquarters, New York, New York, United States. Thanks for listening.